I'm going to talk a little bit about Lodestone and use Lodestone as a talking point just to communicate some ideas that you may be able to employ in the worlds that you work in. As you've heard, I live in New Zealand now. I am a Canadian-born citizen. I've been in the energy business in both countries for coming up on 40 years, and in that time have had an opportunity to play in the disruptive side of the market pretty much the whole time. Even when running large companies, I always felt that sometimes the best disruption can come from large companies that want to embrace change. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be entrepreneurial in a sense, but certainly large companies can be entrepreneurial. And hopefully I can give you some ideas, if you are from a large company, that can be useful. But it's also a rich environment for people that have lots of energy and lots of creativity and want to be a leader and a startup. And so I'll try and bridge those worlds in what I share with you today. So the first thing I'll tell you is, what is Lodestone? Lodestone is a magnetic rock, if you didn't know this. It's the force of attraction that's naturally found in the rock magnetite, and they say magnetite, when it gets struck by lightning, can become magnetic. And so, but it's also the Middle English word for load, which is leading the way or putting us on a journey. So I thought it was a cute way to, name a company that had nothing on day one except a bunch of ideas and wanted to make change. And so we went on our journey, and some of the people I admire and get inspiration from are kind of useful here. The thing about being innovative, being disruptive, is it's bloody difficult and it's dangerous. It's not necessarily the safest career path you could ever take, but intensely rewarding, and the stress and the excitement that come with it. Hopefully you'll see some of that through what I'm going to describe today. The key questions in the decarbonized world, the way I see them now, are: why solar? Why is there so much talk about solar? Why is distribution of that energy important? Why is time of use so important? Is it the cheapest way to make electricity or energy in general? And how important is the end user in the delivery of this thing called solar? And finally, I think what I hope to share with you today is what I think is the description of the future energy company. And when I say energy company, I don't just mean energy utility. I mean some comprehensive connection between the electricity business, the oil and gas business, and the way consumers interact with both fossil fuel and renewable energy. To start with a focus on solar, I don't know if you follow this, some of you would know this, but in 2023 we added as much new solar electricity as the growth in demand globally. So for the first time, solar met the growth. That's a major change in what, if you had said that 10 years ago, you would have been considered fairly crazy to say that could happen. What that means is it was about 3,000 terawatt hours of power, which compared to the amount of coal, it started to become a meaningful measure against that number. And it exceeded the global consumption of electricity for air conditioning by 50%. So we made more energy between 2020 and 2023 than the world used to cool buildings and houses. That's a very interesting, since the correlation is very strong, solar and air conditioning are correlated, it's quite an important measure. If I go back to New Zealand just for a minute, and I'm going to talk about New Zealand specifically because it can be used as a case study elsewhere. We intend to be 100% renewable energy quite quickly. This is not a long-term plan. We're now running as fast as we possibly can to be 100% renewable by the end of the decade. And that will offset 5,600 gigawatt hours of thermal plant and add 7,500 gigawatt hours of demand growth, predominantly electric cars, heat pumps, gas boilers converting to electric boilers, and a pure electrification movement across the entire country. It'll take quite some time to completely get rid of fossil fuel, but that's in the long-term plan. But 100% renewable electricity grid should be achievable in a country like New Zealand quickly, and I'll dare say could be achievable pretty much everywhere. If you think about it, Canada would be an ideal candidate for becoming 100% renewable, and we can talk more about that as I go through. What this means, though, is we need to install about a megawatt a day for 10 years. A megawatt a day is the game plan for Lodestone. We're gearing ourselves up to put in a megawatt a day. That's $1.5 million spent every single day building solar. If we can do maybe half of this game plan, then we could spend 5 years of this 10-year period going hard out to build half. We are quite far ahead of everyone else, and so we have that opportunity. But megawatt a day is quite an interesting number. If you think about it in the context of British Columbia or Alberta, a megawatt a day, 365 megawatts every single year for 10 years. That is an intense transformational movement, and it's very possible. How is it possible? I'm just going to show you a little bit of New Zealand detail. The electricity price in New Zealand since 2004 rose because gas prices rose. We then had a very intense decade of competition and energy efficiency. Houses took their electric heaters and turned them into heat pumps, LED lights. There was a real intense 10 years of energy efficiency. Then we introduced carbon in cost into the electricity price. And now that solar is here, and I'm going to talk about virtual rooftop solar contracts, but virtual rooftop solar contracts can take the gas-inflated, carbon-inflated electricity price over a 20-year period and return that price to the same price levels as we had in 2004. So solar is going to be the reason a 100% renewable electricity market like New Zealand can get prices back to where they were 20 years ago. And that is the main reason for doing it. The critical success factors to do that is create the right incentives to building a megawatt a day kind of message. Regulators, politicians should be thinking about how do we create the incentives to get that kind of speed in the transformation. Getting a time of use focus on the market. Get away from the conversation about capacity and turn it into energy and when. And talk about the difference between capacity and sending time of use signals. Capacity is very related to time of use signals, but it's important to start to distinguish the conversation so that it's more about time than it is about physical 24/7 baseload. The word baseload doesn't really exist in New Zealand anymore. We just talk about at what time of the day is energy needed, because often you don't need so much baseload at night. And in Alberta's case, you ship it to BC, you don't want it so badly you have to get rid of it. And so turning it to a time of use conversation is really important. And then finally, this megawatt a day cannot happen. I guarantee you cannot happen unless customers are a part of that equation. You have to create the customer involvement to get that kind of speed, because the word disruption has kind of the opposite effect, which is protection. And in order for that kind of rate of change to happen, you have to get the customer in a position where they can bypass the incumbent. And it's only then that you can get this kind of speed, I would maintain. Will it produce the lowest cost energy? I think we all in this room are kind of bought into the idea that distributing energy is low cost. You save on transmission costs, you save on network costs, you scatter the energy around, you reduce energy losses. It's kind of a no-brainer. But one of the mental models I'd like to present to you is think about every single town having a solar farm. And our business model in New Zealand is based on this idea. Every town will have a solar farm. Every town in the world could have a solar farm. And every town in the world could have a solar farm and a battery pack. And so how do you execute a plan where every town has a solar farm? Well, our first cut at it is we've scattered our solar farms where the population is. We're very much thinking about every town has a substation with a certain capacity in it. That exact same capacity could be used to export power. It's already there. And so you're just leaning on the system that has been built over 100 years to re-engineer the flows so that every solar farm, or every town has a solar farm. And in our case, this number of solar farms is $1.5 billion company, just kind of overnight. You can uncreate big value and attract shareholders and capital if you take this very simple idea that every town should have a solar farm, and it's amazingly contagious. As soon as one town gets a solar farm, the next town is wondering when will I get mine, and so it does become very kind of like a snowball or a rolling plan that just goes across the landscape. These are some of the solar farms we're building. We're building one about every 3 to 6 months, and so we're on this cadence we're ramping up to that megawatt a day pace. And how can we do this? Well, it's consenting well. It's picking locations that are smart. It's making sure we're engaging with the local community, making sure the farms are weather resistant, resilient to. We have to be resilient to cyclones. We have to be resilient to flood. We have to engage with the farming community and make sure that the land has more than one use. We can't get a consent in New Zealand if you don't promise to keep the productive value of the land going. We're 2.3 meters off the ground, and we can operate in a meter of water. And so these ideas have to become part of this concept. In terms of balancing generation, New Zealand has 2/3 of the population on the North Island and 2/3 of the generation on the South Island. And so this solar farm in every town clearly has to start on the North Island so that we can get a balance. And so the concentration is in the North Island for the early part of this development. But eventually the whole environment is just blanketed with or dotted with solar farms and batteries. And I don't think this is any different than anywhere else. You could do this in British Columbia, you can do this in Alberta, you can do this in Saskatchewan. This idea is not particularly innovative. It's almost a no-brainer. Why don't you just think of this in all contexts? And I think the answer to why not is we've struggled over time with, is it really the lowest cost? The argument against has usually started with, well, you got to subsidize it. It's not really cost effective. If you force me to take it, I'll take it, but boy, consumers are going to take the hit. You know, the rhetoric around it has been incredibly negative. And thank goodness for countries like Germany who got us all going with some subsidy. And then slowly the subsidy has now whittled down the cost to the point where solar power is now, I don't know if this sounds overly dramatic, but really is the lowest cost energy we've ever had as humans. The costs we're seeing now in New Zealand are down to 10 cents a watt US for a panel, 10 cents a watt. Think about that number. The batteries are $100 a megawatt hour. So the idea of having a solar farm in every town and then 3 hours, maybe 4 hours of storage of that solar farm so that the town can get evening power from it is now cheaper than anything else. And it's so cheap that it's useful to think about how solar power becomes gasoline. This is really an important thing if you're winning over political support for this idea. Gasoline will never be cheap now. We know this. It's the days of cheap gasoline are over. 1998 was the lowest cost gasoline ever, lower even than the 30s and 40s and 50s. But since 1998 or year 2000, the price has just steadily gone up, and it won't go down. It's impossible to see how it will go down from this point. And the reason it's so important is you can now charge your car at home with solar energy for the equivalent of about 60 cents US a gallon. And that's, like 15 cents a liter. 15 cents a liter to fill your car. That in 1998 dollars, that was 36 cents a liter. 36 cents a gallon. And the lowest gasoline ever in 1980 was $2. So you take the lowest point gasoline was ever, right today, you can fill your car for something that's 5 times cheaper. And so when you start to hear the conversation roll into, yeah, but renewable energy is so expensive. No, it's actually the cheapest form of energy we've ever had. And the oil industry hates hearing this. The car industry hates hearing this. Why does the car industry hate hearing this? Well, they can't make electric cars fast enough. If all of a sudden every car manufacturer said, I've got 2 cars, one costs 5 times less than the other, which one would you like? You'd pick the lower cost one, most likely. And so there's a really interesting dynamic right now. We are facing energy transition in a way that's almost like what's holding us back. And so when I'm trying to execute a megawatt a day strategy, clearly I can't be selling to my competitors. I can't go to the generation companies and ask for a PPA for a solar farm, because then I'm beholden to their pace. But if I can go to any customer anytime I want, there is no restriction. You can build as much as you can sell. And this is a breakthrough thought, because if you truly are the cheapest form of energy ever known by man, you should be able to sell that, you would think. I should say human, sorry. That was a very misogynistic way to put that in. Man or woman. So the main theme I want to leave you with is customers will drive the outcome. This is the message I want you to really go away with and embrace. Customers will drive the outcome, not the company, not the prime minister or the government at large. It's give the customer the choice, and they will make it. We are on the precipice of creating a residential virtual solar contract that's for life. You can have it for life. You can take it with you. You move house. You can share it with your children if you want. It's an allocation of capacity of a solar farm. And so this is the breakthrough thought for engaging customers' mindsets, is for the first time they could actually own capacity in a power plant that's not on their own house. It's not on their own rooftop. It's somewhere else. and this is how customers will drive the outcome. When you think about deregulation conversations, and I've been watching the Alberta thing and cringing weekly about how that conversation is unfolding, and it's because the competition conversation is in the wrong place. It's competing against the status quo. It's competing against people that could lose quite a lot if all of a sudden there's a solar farm in every town. And so being the customer-focused person is not a new idea, but it could be the critical idea to energy transformation. And so what does it look like? Well, it's kind of simple. You can scatter solar panels all over your building and all over your parking lot to meet your demand, and then rely on the grid to fill in the valleys when the clouds come, or you have a rainy day, or you simply run out of daylight. Or you can take allocation in a remote location and have the market make that location no different electrically than being in your parking lot. And that's the key difference. The market design must be ready to allow, and I'll explain what that is. It's not easy, but the market design must be ready to allow the combination of a physical location and a contract to deliver exactly the same outcome as if you put it on the roof and in your parking lot. And the beauty of the right-hand side is it's a nominal number. You can grow your business. You can shrink your business. You can put electric charging in the parking lot and ask for more panels to be allocated. The one on the right is actually flexible. It can be any shape that you want. And it can easily be 100% of your annual demand. That allocation on the right could be 100% of what you would use, night and day. So how does it work? If you take a traditional rooftop on your house contract, I don't know if this is very popular yet in Canada. I haven't followed it closely enough since my days back at NMAX, but essentially the traditional rooftop plan in New Zealand is a consumer would sign up with an energy retailer. They would give them a battery and a solar panel set and charge them X dollars per month. It's like renting a car or renting anything. And that dollars per month is kind of hopefully making some offsets that are meaningful. But you still pay for any shortfalls. So the power that goes in the middle of the night is on your bill, but you get credit for any surpluses. So the house is becoming a generator and a load at the same time. And the more you can fit on the roof, the better, because you want the surpluses and shortfalls to be balanced in favor of the surplus. And then it all gets squared up at the end of the month, and then away you go. So what a virtual one does is essentially the very same thing. You get an allocation of panels in a farm. Instead of 1 meter that measures both ways, there's 2 meters that are 100 miles apart. But the IT system is matching those meter reads every half an hour so that it gives the exact same outcome as 1 meter that measures both directions. And so you already would figure out then, this is an intensely complicated IT problem. You imagine 2 million people, 17,000 meter reads a year, compared every half an hour with 17,000 meter reads 100 miles from now, put into your bill and creating a wash-up account that you trust. It gets very complicated. But it's not impossible. That's what computers are for. That's what they do really well. And so the creation of the virtual rooftop contract can now be available as a complete alternative to a traditional energy contract that's used every day now. It's just create the opportunity to do it cheaper. So What does it mean? Well, the first thing that happens is it's intensely complicated. The customer engagement at some level becomes massive. If you're we did a contract with a box chain store called The Warehouse, 260 locations in 140 towns, 29 network companies interacting with on a half-hourly basis with a reconciliation every day. And so it's very statistical. Monte Carlo is the favorite word in our shop because everything is a predictive model to make sure that that energy supply is balanced properly against the demand. And but when you get to this place, you then work on how do you simplify it. But you got to get to this place first, and that's what we've spent 5 years getting ready for this moment where we could make this available to anyone. So what is the future then? Solar's the cheapest form of energy ever. We know what batteries can do to shift time. We know customers kind of like the idea of renewable energy. They really like the idea of 100% of their energy made renewable. They just want someone to be able to do it for them in an easy way, make the complexity simple. We're signing up 20-year contracts in a market that was used to signing up 3. And so it's now kind of decisions you make for life. And the idea of when I was at NMAX, we kind of cracked open the idea of a 5-year contract. And now with this stuff, we're talking about contracts for life that go with you. And it's really interesting and exciting to see what happens to people when they start to think that way. And they think about, I can drive my car for the rest of my life on 15 cents a liter. That's really cool. And it is definitely a mindset change that you can't imagine where it will go. And you imagine that in the hands of people that really know how to market stuff. It'd be really, really cool. So the future energy company is solar and batteries, but it's also this virtual rooftop. It's also real rooftop, by the way. There's no reason why real rooftop also doesn't make sense. We have one client that is merging the two together. They put rooftop on their stores, and the virtual fills in all the rest. Solar farm in every town is, some towns will be so big they need 10 of them. But the idea of this is, the purest form of distributed energy when you think of it this way. And the transmission grid's already there. It was built to supply the town that amount of power. So it's already there. And but it has to be big. If you're gonna you imagine you make an offer to a market of 2 million consumers, you can sign up to this. You gotta be able to back it up with something physical. So you've got to have a big plan. You've got to have big volume. The solar farm in every town and the ability to sell a virtual rooftop contract across an entire market are linked. They have to go hand in hand. You have to talk big and be big in order to even make it happen. It sure would help if the government helps that messaging. It would help if the regulatory environment helps that messaging. It sure would help if the transmission grid and the pool helps with that messaging. But underneath it all, you're appealing to the mindset of individuals and making them make a decision. And have the big data system to handle it. Big computer power. This is a revenue computer, so it has to be intensely auditable and buttoned down. But it's kind of you need all 5 of these things to work perfectly to make it happen. I've got 34 seconds left. So we've got 34 seconds of questions. Oh, I got 2 more minutes. I got 2 long questions. Okay, that's good.
Coming. Hold on.
Oh.
Gary, it's good to have you back for a short time. What I heard more than anything was the story of leadership. All the technical, financial, make the complexity simple. That only happens because of leadership. And so what you've accomplished in New Zealand is a credit to you. Coming back to Canada and having the memories that you have here, and the history that you had here, what would you like to see happening here? And especially in this context of leadership, what is it that we need to be doing? And I think for a gathering like this in an organization that's hosting it, what could it be doing to advance leadership?
Wow. Well, look, I learned a bunch of things about disruption. My first 6 or 7 years in New Zealand, we did a lot of disruption. We built the first independent power plants, and when I left New Zealand in 1999, we had 35% market share. So we had a lot of disruption, but it was accepted disruption. Fast forward to my time at ENMAX, we were equally disruptive. We went from 18% market share to 44% market share, introduced 5-year contracts. I think we built 85% of all the generation in that 5-year period. That was intensely disruptive, but it probably crossed the line of what disruptive was acceptable. And so disruption is one of these things. Everyone knows it's important to have disruption in a market, but it should be an environment that's safe. And what I think, if I was to wish something positive for Canada, is for disruption to be safe, where it's okay to have an idea like what I just shared with you, drop it in Alberta and not have any backlash. Have a regulatory environment where if all of a sudden you have 20% market share, it's kind of celebrated, not attacked. And so leadership can come in a lot of forms, but it would be nice if it was embraced to the point where it was celebrated. And unfortunately, you do get winners and losers. The company that owns the coal plant that's about to be closed by solar is a loser, is going to lose. They're going to have to write off a bunch of assets. And they know this. They accept it. The government doesn't give them any time of day when they complain about it. And so it really is about getting a safe environment. I think we got one more question.
Sorry.
No more questions.
I'm going to renege on that offer of the second question. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, whoever had a question. So. Yeah, sure. Will you be here for the 2 days?
Yes.
Gary will be here for the full 2 days.
I have some, meetings to go to, but I'll be around.
Yeah, so make sure you nab him.
Yeah.
Gary, that was amazing.